Deputy Mayor Lavoie. Welcome all. Thank you for coming to the May 7th City Port Angeles Council meeting. Let's do the roll call, please.
Mayor Brooke.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Dexter.
Here.
Councilmember French.
Here.
Councilmember Kidd.
Here.
Councilmember Meredith.
Here.
Councilmember Moran. Councilmember Sherman Warren.
Here.
Manager West.
Present.
Attorney Fuller.
Here.
I move to excuse Councilmember Moran.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so he's been excused. Wonderful. So let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we are at ceremonial matters, and Stephanie, come on up. And Stephanie, how do you say your last name? Benches. All right. So here we are at proclamation in recognition of building community by embracing diversity through pickleball. Whereas pickleball, a combination of tennis, badminton, and ping pong, was invented in Bainbridge Island, Washington in 1965. And whereas the city of Port Angeles recognizes the importance of pickleball as the fastest growing sport in North America, with more than 3 million of all ages now playing, and whereas pickleball is an intergenerational, low-impact, competitive sport that is easy to learn, inexpensive to play, and promotes camaraderie, teamwork, kindness, and enjoyment for individuals and the community as a whole, and whereas the Esprit Conference focus on personal growth and friendship while changing lives for the better by creating pride and self-respect for anyone who is transgender, and whereas Esprit celebrates 30 years of being held in Port Angeles and helps support the volunteer hospice of Clallam County yearly with donations from their activities, and whereas Esprit will hold a community pickleball tournament on May 13th, especially for beginners, with clinics and lessons before the tournament at Elks Park. And whereas everyone in Port Angeles is invited to come out for the complimentary pickleball community event, How Pickleball Builds Health, Diversity, and Community, on May 13th, 2019, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Elks Park, offering pickleball drills, tips, questions and answers, plus opportunity to play. And whereas pickleball volunteers and enthusiasts share their joy of having fun, building health, and experiencing community through pickleball, and whereas the Composite Recycling Technology Center, who manufactures pickleball paddles and nets in Port Angeles, is supporting this event by donating 2 paddles. Now, therefore, I, Sissy Brooke, Mayor of Port Angeles, hereby proclaim May 13th to May 19th, 2019 to be Esprit and Pickleball Week, and urge all community members to join in on the Esprit festivities, embrace diversity, and come learn and play pickleball. So, Steve, you want to say a couple of words?
The main thing is just to say thank you for the proclamation.
You are quite welcome, and like I said, Espree's been coming here to this community for 30 years. That is amazing. So we will welcome them again this coming week. Thank you.
You need to disclose that you're a pickleball player.
Yes, I am a pickleball player. Not a very good one, but I can hold my own. All right. So next, we've got public comment. And we've got a couple of folks signed up. The first person is Dennis Lavoie. So please state your name and whether you live in the city. And would you like to take about 3 minutes for this?
Hi there, my name is Dennis Lavoie. I do not live in the city. I am currently employed by the City of Port Angeles as a communications officer with PenCom. In almost 8 years with PenCom, I've had the privilege to work with some pretty amazing folks, some now retired and sadly others moving on due to our workload and stresses of the job. This job is not for everyone. It truly requires unique individuals with various abilities. In addition, the stress of the job not only affects the dispatchers, but also affects their families. The lack of preparation on behalf of the city has really put a burden on our center, the dispatchers, therefore pushing people out and seeking different employment opportunities. With our skill set, most dispatchers can leave dispatch and soon after find a job with equal pay, with less stress and no shift work. Things have to change, and it starts by making PenCom your top priority. We are the lifeline for all of our responders. Every 911 call, every non-emergency line that comes through our center, it starts with us and it ends with us. We are the people who send help to various locations. We are the first of the first responders. Our center is in a crisis, and we need to start investing in our staffing. This year, we have been operating our center with 8 to 11 dispatchers. Fully staffed, we should be at 18. And we have already surpassed our overtime hours from all of 2018. I myself have worked 266 hours of overtime just through the month of April. In 2018, I had a total of 260 hours for that whole year. We've had several dispatchers without 2 consecutive days off for over 2 months, where they're working 4 in a row, they're getting 1 day off, then they're working 5 in a row, getting 1 day off, and so on. We work 12-hour shifts. I would ask you, how many of you have worked 7 days in a row? How many of you have worked 8 in a row, 9 in a row? I've done 9 in a row, that's 108 hours. We're doing those things in the dispatch center to try to take care of each other, to give others a break, give them 2 consecutive days off, or to try to secure specific dates that we're trying to be off. In the last 2 months, dispatchers have been averaging 40 hours of overtime a pay period. You can do the math, that's a lot of overtime. Vacations have been denied, and the outlook for this summer is not looking promising. If we're already worked so much overtime just through 4 months, and we're not even in the busy season. We are not attracting new hires. We have to focus on providing a competitive wage, keeping up with the cost of living, and taking care of the people we currently have. Currently, there is potential for us to lose 1 to 2 more dispatchers in the next 2 months, which is really going to put a burden on our center. I will remind you that our department is unique and our budget is made up from user agency fees, from county sales and use tax and some grants. The City of Port Angeles pays just 10% of the PenCom budget for user fees for the Port Angeles Police Department, but you do have 100% control over the wages and benefits of PenCom. In closing, I'm still here, part of the department, because I have a passion for what I do and I enjoy what I do. However, something does have to change, and we are going to fail as a department. We are going to fail our community, who counts on us if things continue this way. Think about this, and for all of you that are here, if your loved one or family member is calling 911 for help, and we're having to put them on hold or maybe can't get to the call due to the circumstances and the lack of staffing, how would you feel? I sure hope that's not my family member or yours getting put on hold in their time of need. I urge you to help us keep our commitment to our citizens, help us continue our commitment towards excellence, so we can help save lives, protect property, and assist the public in their time of need. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Joseph Nevis.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Nevis. I live at 1702 Melody Circle, apartment 316 in the city of Port Angeles. And it's good to see you again, although I haven't been here for about 8 to 10 years. Tonight, I would like to try to plant the seed, if I may. Everybody here, I know, drives. And you know how the traffic congestion has been getting a little bit harder and harder each year in Port Angeles. And when the projects that are planned come to fruition downtown, it's going to get even worse. However, I do have an idea, and it's not my idea. It has been in the planning department for at least 6 decades, ever since the layout for the eastern subdivision on the east side of White Creek was developed. And that idea is to basically connect the East Lorison Boulevard, that's just north of Peninsula College, to the East Lorison Boulevard on the other side of White Creek, which leads to the junction at Golf Course Road. This would alleviate surface traffic by bringing more of the passenger cars and light trucks that are in the area off the main highway. Now, this is not, I repeat, not a truck route. We already have a truck route. It's called Highway 101, and it serves us pretty well so far. Now, the thing about building this bridge, it's half the length of either of the A Street bridges, and it's about twice the length of the current of the new Lorison Street Bridge. And it spans an area, about 1,000 feet. The White Creek is at the equal grades on each side is 334 feet above sea level, and it spans, to the creek bed below, which is about 128 feet above sea level. The bridge, would be would alleviate, a lot of the traffic problems by bringing all, the eastern subdivision, traffic, giving them an alternate way to go. Anyway, I think this time has come, and like it bears looking out, even after 6 decades. And to paraphrase a famous line from the movie Jaws in the mid-70s, you're going to need another bridge. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Steve Drake.
Hi, my name is Steve Drake. I do live in the city, and I've talked to you a couple other times before at the council and different members in the audience. What I'm here tonight for, I didn't know that some union members were going to be here, which is kind of cool because it pertains to them in a way. But what I want to talk about is we have a world-class city, definitely. We have a world-class waterfront trail, no doubt. We have a 9/11 Memorial Waterfront Park. Not very many cities have that. World class above everything else. But what I'm here to talk about is there's not access to it for the handicapped. When they go down Georgiana Street and come to Francis, if they're on the north side of Georgiana, they come across, or they come up to a curb and they can't go down to the waterfront trail. They have to turn around if they're in a wheelchair or a motorized cart, go back a half a block or more on both sides, go in the street, which is not good, go in the street, drive down the street and then go to Francis Street and go down to the trail. We don't need to have that in this town. That's ridiculous. For that point, I know there's other sidewalks around town that have that inability to go out with wheelchairs and stuff. But right there, because of the waterfront trail and the access, and we have the park and everything going on, which with the events coming up, the marathon, Memorial Day weekend, 4th of July, everything that goes on, wheelchair and handicap cannot go down and have sidewalk access. I think it'd be no problem at all. There's guys here that could go and do that and have it done next week, that the city could have a nice access for everyone for the different promotions and things that we have going on down at the waterfront trail. And I just want to say that I think the council should put that on their priority list above others because of that access point and the closeness of what it is to the waterfront trail and everyone coming from any direction. It only has to be on two sides of the street because that's where the sidewalks go all the way to the curb. But anyway, I wish the city would do that, and I just hate to see those handicapped people in wheelchairs, especially going back and then coming back again on the road. There's a lot of traffic there. So anyway, thank you, and I just wanted to say that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Aaron Cole.
Good evening, council members. Thanks for having me. I'm not a member of the city, but I do represent many people that do live in the city and also work for the city. We're local 1619 city employees here. We are here to talk about, not negotiate in public our contract, but we've been going for 7 months, and we're still awaiting something back from you all, and we would appreciate something that's acceptable and is something on par with our other comparables of other similar cities, other brothers and sisters and other bargaining units that are in this area. At this point in time, we don't have that. We've even done a study 2 years ago to show that certain job classes that we have are behind by 21% in their comparables. I don't know if that information has been shared with the council, but it's certainly information that we do have, and we have talked about this specifically with the city before. We're in agreement on some of the things that in areas where we are behind in certain job classes. You know, the city employees here, they make sure that your drinking water is clean, that the streets are maintained, the parks are mowed. Then we get planning done, hopefully for some sidewalks that are appropriate, and support your administration. And we have all sorts of job classes. I can tell you how many. There are many, many ones. We just want to be able to make Port Angeles happen. We're doing more with less as well. You know, as parks grow, we have maintained the same staff, I believe, for over 20 years. So that's just goes to show we can't get to everything. We would like to be directed to, and we enjoy to help the citizens, such as the last speaker, to make things better while living here. In the end, we just would like to have some kind of approval of some study that does show the appreciation for us and what we're doing, that we are behind on some salary schedules and behind some of the wages that have increased for some of our bargaining units in the area. We just like to have something that's fair. We're ready to come back for the next meeting if we need to. I know you were just presented something probably today, but we wanted to make sure that you hear us, that we're here, we're interested, and we can't wait to hear what we have coming toward us anytime soon. And again, we make Port Angeles happen. These employees are ones that have, during the snowstorm and the windstorm, they got the city back on the grid. They worked hard day and night, and it was amazing to see what happened, and they deserve thank you and appreciation from the citizens and from the council. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you all. We really do depend on you. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to address the council?
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Nathan West. Steve Burke with Williams Shore Pool District, and I just wanted to come in and just give my appreciation to some of your staff that have gone above and beyond. We're finally moving the Horizon Center house this Thursday, and the guys in the community development, Jim, Kevin, and David, as well as Public Works, took a very complicated project and creatively got it to work. And I just wanted to let the council know that we as a district really appreciate all the effort that the city has helped us with in getting this accomplished. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience who would like to speak to council on any item? All right. Seeing no one, we will move on from public comment to late items. Are there any late items for this meeting?
Madam Mayor, we have no late items this evening.
All right.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
could we recognize two new department heads sitting with the staff this evening? Mr. West?
Madam Mayor and Council, we do have with us this evening Serena Carrizosa, who's our new finance director. We're so happy to have Serena step up in that role. And currently we have acting Public Works and Utilities Director Shalish, who you know already, but he will be in that acting role representing Public Works before Council while we're waiting on filling the new Public Works Director position.
Thank you and welcome. Thank you so much for that. That was, yes. We are thrilled to have you guys on board at these new positions. So we've got, we're on to the consent agenda. Is there any items in the consent agenda that need to be pulled? Okay, if not, I'm going to read it. It says, City Council minutes for April 16th, 2019. Expenditure report from April 6th, 2019 to April 26th, 2019 in the amount of $2,752,086.27. Pro-term hearing examiner, Surface and Transportation Program Grant, Peninsula Regional Transportation Planning Organization contract.
I move we approve the consent agenda as read.
Second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This passes unanimously. All right, we will move on to budget amendment number 1.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So tonight we have the second reading of the first amendment to the 2019 budget. Since the first reading, there have been no changes, so I don't really have anything to add or share with you tonight, but I am available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Council, are there any questions regarding the budget? All right, seeing none, let's read the second. So let me read the ordinance. An ordinance of the City of Port Angeles, Washington, amending the 2019 budget and funds. So that's the second reading of the ordinance.
I move we adopt the 2019 budget amendment number 1 ordinance.
Second.
And is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, that was easy. So we will move on to Washington State Recreation Conservation Office Grant Certification Resolution.
Madam Mayor, Interim Director will address that item.
Thank you, Mr. West. The resolution before you is a change in format. The one that was in your packet. That is the only change. The substance of the resolution is the same. The amount of $203,100 is a 10% match to other monies through grant programs. Just wanted to make the note that the change in format, which was approved by the City Attorney's Office, is the only change. The substance and the amount are the same.
Great, thank you. Is there any questions regarding this item? So If not, I will read the resolution. Okay, so it says a resolution of the City Council of Port Angeles, Washington, authorizing the certification of grant match as required for funding assistance for the Washington Wildlife and Recreation Programs for the Hill Street Olympic Discovery Trail Project, the TR0114.
This is one of the projects where it makes you feel so good to be serving on the Port Angeles City Council. So we'll be receiving $1.4 million. We do have matching funds requirement of about $200,000, but we receive an investment in our city, and for over $1 million. And this is just marvelous. This is to help the Hill Street Olympic Discovery Trail, and this is for generations to come. We're building something wonderful. So I highly support this, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity to do so.
Anyone else?
I think it'll be really nice to, I know this project was something we've been working on anyway, but I really appreciate, of course, any opportunity to accept grant money for that. And I'm looking forward to having it much more clear how to get from the trail to the trail. So having that Hill Street piece complete will be really beneficial for everyone.
Any further discussion? And I guess one of the things I'd like to say is that this is a trail that is being built by a lot of different folks working together. It's the county and it's some private and public funds and nonprofits that have been working really hard to get this trail together.
Madam Mayor, if I could add a few comments there. I think it's probably important to share that we could probably talk a very long time about the really great accomplishments of many of the employees that we have in the audience this evening. And it's certainly, if we have the time and we had projects appropriate to talk about each of them, we'd love to do that because we take pride in the amount of work and how dedicated each of these employees are, and we greatly appreciate it. But I do want to mention, because of this particular item, the hard work and diligence of Ben Broderick, who brought the grant funding forward for this project, knowing that he had to go through multiple presentations before state groups in Olympia to get this funding received. Knowing that he worked hard to get us there and to see this project successful, I think acknowledging him in the audience this evening is important.
Here, here.
Ben, stand up so that everybody knows who you are.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thank you all, because it does take everybody, and especially we appreciate your work. So, okay, Council, how do we want to move forward?
I move let's see, how do we do this? Resolution. So I'm just trying to get the wording for the motion.
H1.
H1, they're right here. Okay, I move we authorize the city manager to sign the certificate of match document identifying $203,100 in REAP funding as the required 10% match.
Second.
All right, very good. A motion and a second. Do we need to amend this by say also have the mayor sign the resolution, or is that all tied up together now?
I think that would be a good addition to the motion, please.
Okay. So can you guys accept that as a friendly amendment?
Amend that have the mayor sign
The resolution.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so,
I'd also just like to add that this is a creative use of, we had a larger match required, but we're able to use a separate grant as part of that match. That's really great creativity.
Yeah.
all right, and there any further discussion? So all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Thank
opposed?
you, Ben.
So it passes unanimously. Thank you. So we are now on to other considerations, and we will begin this with our safety presentation by Steve Sutton.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, it's a pleasure to introduce my friend, Chief Steve Sutton from the Lake Forest Park Police Department. Steve is a veteran of Washington law enforcement, both with State Patrol and with Lake Forest Park Police Department, and I think he's a subject matter expert in what he's going to talk tonight. Look forward to your questions and interest. And we're very appreciative of Steve taking the time to come up here and talk to us. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me. My name is Steve Sutton. I'm the Chief of Police for the City of Lake Forest Park, like Brian talked about. I've been in law enforcement in the Peninsula area for 25 years, and I've been the Chief of Police for about 6. And so I'm really happy when Brian called me to talk about this, and if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to talk to me about it. So I'm here to talk about our traffic safety camera system, our photo enforcement system in the City of Lake Forest Park. Lake Forest Park's in King County. We've seen a lot of growth, 50,000 residents a year. I know that you guys, when you feel growth here in your city, there's not a place, we talked about, the gentleman talked about the roads. You feel the pinch. And it's been about 4 years since I've been up here, and I noticed it coming in on the highway. We've got traffic coming all directions. So we did some studies and found that the best places to do our camera locations were leading collision areas and around our schools. And so in 2011, we inserted one red light camera on Bothell Way, which is a state route, which made it a little complicated, and then 3 school zones in the city. We continued in 2015 to add an additional red light system along that same corridor, and then also additional school zone. And then in 2018, one more red light system to complete the corridor, and it's a traffic safety corridor along Bothell Way, which is State Route 522 on the north end of Lake Washington. The goal of the program really was to address pedestrian safety, especially around the schools. And then on Bothell Way, if you're familiar with that area, we have a lot of bike traffic because of the Brook Gilman Trail, a lot of commuters on buses. We have a mall, just a lot of activity, and there were some pedestrian collisions, so we wanted to address those, as well as try to keep our kids safe at the schools. Also in 2011, one of the big drivers was the tolling on State Route 520 began, which increased traffic on our city roads by about 15%. Therefore, our collisions just went up as well. From a police department standpoint, we use this as a force multiplier. We're a small department. We have 20 sworn police officers, so we're running a minimum staffing pretty much all the time. So we can't do everything, be everywhere, and the photo enforcement systems have allowed us to take on other tasks rather than sitting at the red lights or in the school zones. We still do those, but not as much as we did. So it's really been a force multiplier. It also has become an annual component of our traffic safety plan. So it's actually something we build on and work with our community on so they understand it. And one of the big things is driver behavior. If you get a ticket, you're going to remember a ticket. If you get a warning, I can get away with it again. If you get a ticket, national studies say about 20 to 30% of the time it's going to correct your behavior, which is good. That's what we want, is corrective behavior. And then overall, a safety increase around our schools and our busy roads. That's really important for us. Like I said, we've seen a huge increase in traffic. With this program, though, there comes a lot of negatives. You're going to hear a lot of negatives about the program, and that's okay. Got to embrace it and talk to the people. We do that. We did it today. You're listening to the community, which is fantastic. But really, it's about public perception versus income. It's the income. They think we're in it for the income, and that's our single purpose. It is a part of our traffic safety mission to reduce collisions, pedestrian safety, and that is the message that we always talk about from a council perspective, from a city leadership perspective, from a police department perspective. It's about the safety of our community. And unless the community, the council, and city leadership all buy into it, the program won't work. Another negative is public disclosure requests. We've seen that, obviously, I'm sure you guys are facing public disclosure requests all the time here. So when this program first began, we saw a huge spike in public disclosure requests. And that's to be expected. People are questioning, everything about it, the legalities of it, is it working? The systems are really, the technology is amazing and what you get today. And so it's really hard to refute them, especially when you see little video clips and pictures. But you will see an increase. But today, we're into the program 8 years, and, I might get 2 public disclosure requests on it, which is awesome. I'll talk about what we do with those on my next slide. And obviously, staff time, I think we're running about 15,000 infractions a year. So that takes each officer, and it needs to be a commissioned police officer to approve it after it goes through a few other checks. So it's going to take them about a minute per, so you have to do the math. I mean, I don't know what that equates to, a lot of time. So, our officers at night do it, the graveyard shift guys do it, at 2, 3 in the morning. So that's how we get away with it. And then also the court staff time, that's going to increase quite a bit too. But again, over the time, we've streamlined our processes and we've got it down. But in the beginning, it's a big lift for those different work units.
Does the court staff time only really happen when they challenge the tickets?
Well, we have mitigation hearings, so we'll actually, we get all those mitigation hearings now. It increases court time, right, for the judge, for the staff. So did I answer your question? I was trying to find you when you were asking. So. I was there.
So like you send out a citation, if they just send back payment, does that matter to court staff time?
A little bit. They have to receive the payment, take the envelope, So yeah, every little bit is going to be built into that process. And so 15,000 more tickets, that's a lot of staff time, right? So.
I have a quick question about that as well. Have you seen a decrease in the number of people who challenge that since it started?
Right, we have, right. And the system that we use, they provide expert testimony, they provide all of the logs about the service agreements and the work and the maintenance that's being done on them. So if somebody's challenging them, it's always there. We get weekly emails that just keep updating when it's done. So it's all really well done and thought out. What does a successful program look like? And to me, it's about total transparency with the community, total transparency with the people doing it. I think we've seen some cases where if they're not transparent, they're not willing to talk about it in the community, and it just shows up, it really becomes a driver, and really don't want that. Again, buy-in from the community and the city leadership, the court, throughout the whole program is very, very important. One other successful part is the staff discretion and complaint mitigation. If I get a public disclosure request, 99% of the time is this person got a ticket that doesn't feel like it. I can go on my computer within 30 seconds and watch it and see, look at the date, the time. Oh, that wasn't a school time. What the heck? Something's wrong. Call them up. Say, hey, we're just going to take care of the ticket. I'll take care of it right now. Walk over to the court and say, fill this out. It's done. So that's a success with the program, giving your staff the ability to do that. Don't have business rules that don't allow your staff to make those decisions, because you don't want that public disclosure growing and becoming, it festers, as you know. That's a big problem. So also positive public outreach. We did a lot with our schools, our PTAs, the news media, different community groups, the Rotary clubs. We get presentations. And you're taking it on the chin, but you're having the ability to have that open communication. It's not Big Brother. It's about safety. It's about collision reduction and that type of stuff. So it really is, to me, a positive for the community. And one of the big things, I'm going to retire in July. I'm so excited. And I'm not at my city council. So this is my advice, is to have a plan for that increased revenue, because there will be increased revenue, but have that plan that reinvests into your community instead of just going into the general fund. Having a plan to reinvest in sidewalks and safe routes to schools, traffic calming measures in neighborhoods, different types of things. You can use it to pay public safety, and you can use it to pay roads and whatever you want to use it, but have a plan that is transparent, again, with the community. And I think that's really, really important. We didn't do that in the beginning, and it's really hard to backpedal. So I'm constantly fighting. We have a really good traffic calming program. The neighborhood wants speed bumps, and it's going to be $8,000 a piece or whatever. I have to go beg for my public works director to get those speed bumps. And it should just be, we should have some money set aside for this program. So anyway, that's really, really important. And that's my show. And so I know that you guys may have talked about it, and Brian and I had talked about our program, and there's so much to it, about how many enforcement, what's the percentage, how many people pay. In our city, 85% of the tickets are not our own residents. I don't know how that would play out here because you're kind of a small community, so we have a commute population that comes in and out through our school zones, through our red light cameras. So, and like I said, we have about 15,000 a year, and we figured it's about 70 to 72% of those that get cited actually pay the fine. So you can actually do the math and figure out the revenue stream. I would gladly answer any questions.
Well, like I said, thank you so much for this presentation, because I know that we do have an issue of, I get a lot of emails saying, hey, people are flying through this road.
Yeah.
And I know we don't have the officers to really be at each of those intersections. So the safety issue for these cameras, I think, is something that we really, I guess, we're starting to take a look at it.
Yeah.
And so it makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad to hear that for you, it seems like it was a really positive experience. But we do need then to make sure that we get to the community information out there, and to make sure that we have a plan. Those are the two things I'm hearing that we really need.
And we did the studies where we do our collision data anyway. We know where our hot spots are for collisions. Our school zones, luckily, we're not having kids hit, but we're having lots of complaints. So, that's a data point, how many complaints in our school zones. And, you can't have speed cameras anywhere but in school zones. That's the way the state law reads. So you can't be on some random road. You have to be in the school zone. So that's something to consider if you're thinking that a neighborhood needs a speed camera that doesn't work like that.
Great.
Question, you mentioned public disclosure, public records requests. Did you guys go into this with a strategy on that? Or
I think it just blew up real quick. Yeah, and we got good at it real quick. And so we had a couple early on that took a lot of time, that really, before we kind of caught on that we should treat these a little differently, not bow our backs and, fight, not to give, or, that type of stuff. Really, why is he complaining? Well, probably we were maybe wrong. It's okay to say we were wrong. That's really important to say. We're not going to fight for something that isn't right. And so that took a little bit of time, because we were like, we don't know if we can give them all that information. We're not sure, and it's a new system. It's not our system. It's a vendor system. And they have the data. We don't have the data. Do we have to give it to them, not give it to them? You go back and forth.
Thank you so much for coming out and presenting on this. I'm thinking of the questions I've received from people in our community about it, and one question has to do with how much of the citation revenue goes to the jurisdiction and how much of it goes to the vendor. Do you have an answer on that?
I do. We pay a site fee, and I want to say it's $4,700 a month for that fee. 100% of the citation comes to the city. The vendor will also guarantee a cost neutrality clause. So if the system isn't at least making money to break even, they're not going to charge you past that. So that's a nice little safety net. They're very involved in where you're going to put them. So Chief will give them some data, so here's where I think, and then we'll do some studies. They'll throw up some traffic counters, some different things in those different areas to make sure that there is a problem in that area. And if there's a problem, then they have a study guide that'll actually run through how many tickets a day they expect to get.
So just to make sure I understand it then, the vendor doesn't have an incentive to have more citations once they've reached that flat fee. And if they don't reach that flat fee, then we don't have an incentive to make sure there's a certain amount, because they have a provision in the agreement to only charge a lesser amount if there's a lesser amount.
Right.
So council, we're somewhat into the process already of working with the vendor, because we've got a buying agreement with Seattle SS Lake Forest, so we've got some more to tell you when we come back about this. I really appreciate Steve's presentation, and this is part of of the outreach. Like you start with somebody that knows about this and has a lot of things to talk about. He's got some more information available, and you know, we can certainly field other questions. I think we're out of time, but thank you, Council.
And I've got one more question for you. Go ahead. So you guys you started with a couple of school zone cameras and one intersection.
Right.
And then you grew to another and another. Do you feel like, I mean, it seems like you did this very thoughtfully and slowly.
Right.
Is that the way you would recommend doing it?
Yeah, and let the data do your driving for you too. I mean, let the collision data, let the complaint data, let the vendor data kind of help guide that process as well. That gives you that back pocket information to the community groups that say, why are you doing this? You know, it's like, this is why we're doing this, because the data, the collisions or the complaints are high. We want to keep our kids safe around our schools. So you really be thoughtful on your community messaging and how you do it as a team, the leadership team and the council, and then the employees too. So they can all understand when they get questioned, by their citizens.
Great, thank you.
So do you have notifications, like a sign at the school zone sign that says speed enforced by photo camera? That sort of thing?
Oh yeah, so the RCW is pretty specific on what the camera signage is supposed to be, how long they're supposed to be up before you start the system. There is no, the beacons, the flashing beacons, the law doesn't require them, but we require them in our policy basically. So, but the law is specific on photo enforcement and how it's all supposed to be laid out.
Then you mentioned discretion of officers. Every citation you give is reviewed by a law enforcement officer, a human being, not just a computer.
Right. So the computer spits out its business rules. I mean, it's got its whole thing that it does. And then somebody from the vendor actually will look at it. Then they'll send it to the officer. So it's been screened twice before it gets to the officer. And if there's any question at all, the officer will just deny it. I mean, he's looking at the screen with the video clip. These red light cameras are amazing because they capture the speed even though they're not writing it. And so you get somebody going through a red light at 60 miles an hour in the 30 zone, and and then you see a pedestrian step off the curb, all in the video clip. It's like, it's awesome. It's great technology.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the presentation.
Thank you, Council.
All right. Capital facilities process. We'll move into that.
Madam Mayor and Council, tonight we wanted to give the Council an update on the capital facilities plan processes. We did change that up a little bit this year, and I think in doing so we wanted to give Council a little bit more time to be able to look at and process the document. So ultimately, city staff actually began the capital facilities planning process in February of this year. I think Council will appreciate that some of the same Finance Department staff members who are putting together the COSA details are also putting together the capital facilities plan. That's been a challenge in itself, keeping up with schedule and time frame perspective. However, I think it's important that what we're trying to do is get it out ahead of schedule, recognizing that we want the Utility Advisory Committee to have an opportunity to take a look at it, give it good time, ensure that we have 2 dedicated public hearings for members of the public to weigh in. But an important addition this year is a work session that we have. And I think to look at that work session, which is scheduled currently for May 28th, I think it'll give Council a unique opportunity that you haven't had in the past to really look at and digest the capital facilities plan document, take an opportunity to discuss it, evaluate whether staff has prioritized projects in the correct place, whether Council has a desire to reprioritize before we get to those actual public hearings. I do want to mention that May 14th is when the document is scheduled to go to the Utility Advisory Committee, and that will be a meeting where we hope that the UAC will actually forward a recommendation to Council. We had hoped to get that document out today. Unfortunately, it's looking like it's going to be tomorrow morning before we get that document out, but we are trying to get it out as quickly as possible. And then come May 28th, Council will have another look again, looking at priorities, ensuring that we're taking every opportunity, but also prioritizing those planning elements relative to the interests of the community, and that each of you represent the constituents in our community, and we want to make sure that staff did a good job putting it together. Additionally, I think it's really important because we did hear during public comment at least 2 different speakers mention capital projects that are desired in the future. And one opportunity that I always like to highlight are those public hearing opportunities that are always required that we do every year for members of the public to weigh in, evaluate and review our capital facilities plan and comment. And if there's other projects that members of the public feel need to be prioritized or added to the list, that's the time to do that. Ideally, they bring it up. What will be our June 6th council meeting is the first public hearing. The second public hearing, I believe, is the June 18th meeting. Let me repeat that first one. June 4th and June 18th are the 2 public hearing times. So hopefully that's a helpful update. I'd be happy to answer any additional questions on the capital facilities plan process. Again, UAC will be considering that document next week.
Council, any questions?
I was just going to mention that I appreciate the opportunity for the work session. I think that's going to be really valuable in looking through it and having a more dedicated time to ask questions about it.
And Council, I wanted to make sure that we talk about this item because one of the things that is our purview is to make sure that we have budget goals established for staff. And this is the beginning of just the capital facilities section for the budget goals. And one of the things to take a look in there is that I know we have items on the budget, on the capital facilities plan that have been budgeted. And then we have usually things that are what they'll consider the parking lot, but unfunded basically. One of the things to take a look at, if you could, I would say as kind of our homework, is to look at the things that should be priorities. Like, I know we talked, eons ago about potentially having a bypass for Port Angeles, or we talked about decoupling First and Front Street. So where are they? I mean, if they are priorities of ours, there should have some funding. If they are not, and if they are priorities and they're not having funding, and they are forever living down here, then we've obviously not prioritized them well. So what I'm hoping that this council can really do is take a really hard look at this capital facilities plan and see if it's fitting the priorities of the comprehensive plan, the priorities of the strategic plan, and so that we're funding the things that are prioritized, or that should be prioritized.
So I think of it as our comprehensive plan informs the capital facilities plan and also informs the strategic plan, which in some way informs the capital facilities plan. Not to make it sound like a big sidewalk. But in that sense, then, I would really like it if the capital facilities plan reference what sections of the comprehensive plan it's helping to fulfill, or whether it's responsive to elements in the strategic plan, which is really a 2-year implementation of the comprehensive plan. That's a specific thing that I think would help in that prioritization process.
Yeah, and I believe that it is, I think the items are tied to the comprehensive plan, and so we may have to kind of see how much they fit into the strategic plan and maybe put a column or something to add that to make sure that they're there.
Council, you will see those reference points in the document, in the introductory letter to the document. You'll see the fact that we have referenced strategic plan and comprehensive plan.
Yeah, already the document has comprehensive plan objectives met in reference to each of the different items in its description. I don't know that it references the strategic plan in that way, and I'm not sure exactly how beneficial that would be, since the strategic plan is in a sense the implementation of the comprehensive plan. I did also want to say thank you for being responsive to some of the concerns raised last year by UAC in regard to time for reviewing this document. I think that's really important. And it's one of the most essential things that we do as the council or as the utility advisory committee, and having that time to do that is really essential. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anything else on this? All right, so we will move on to the agenda for the joint meeting with all the county commissioners.
Madam Mayor and Council, before you have a draft agenda. Those items on that draft agenda are items that were provided by the county commissioners referencing a desire that the county commissioners had to speak to those items. It's staff recommendation that we actually try to eliminate or reduce those items down to perhaps 3, that's probably more realistic. The meeting is tentatively scheduled based on staff polling council members and obtaining details from county commissioners. May 20th is when that meeting is tentatively scheduled. The draft agenda is for that time. I think staff would be happy to comment and provide some additional background that we also received today from the county on those items. In particular, the funding sources 2060 and 2063 that are referenced are important relative to the county's homelessness funding aspects, and that is something that I know council cares a great deal about, as well as is important to the county commissioners. So I do feel that's an important one. Staff would be more than happy to provide an update relative to the city housing needs assessment that might also be beneficial to the county. And I do want to mention, relative to the last item on the agenda, the county suggested Department of Natural Resources discussion relative to funding. I think for the county, that's a substantial funding element. And I think their desire is probably to ensure that the city also cares about that funding element. It might be appropriate for council to consider talking about both state and federal funding opportunities and how both the county and city receive those. I think that might be an important modification to that item if that's something council wants to continue to see on the agenda.
Council, any questions or any comments on this?
I really would like to, I think all, of course, we could probably create a list of 30 things that would be great to talk to them about. I would really like to see prioritizing the conversation about improved regional coordination of housing and homeless issues. Because that's not something those are things that we're going to have to collaborate on in order to make a significant dent, I think. And I'd be interested in reviewing 2060 and 2163 in the context of that conversation.
I'd like to have a discussion regarding the payments that do come into the county and as far as the equitable division of what the county gets and what the city gets, payments in lieu of taxes that come in. I think that's a discussion we've never had, but I don't believe that we're aware of what we should receive and what we could receive. I think that would be a timely discussion.
Are we ready to have an informed conversation on that based on journal numbers? That's my question.
I do think staff could be prepared to do that.
Yeah, and I would agree with Councilmember Kidd.
Anybody else? So, yeah, and I think within wrapping that conversation, because I know we had the item where SWIM had put their social services joint group together because of funding. So I know that here it's specifically dealing with homelessness. So I think it hits a lot of the same groups. So I would like to, and maybe not expand, but I mean, within that homelessness task force, I think the funding source will be really critical. So.
I was just going to say, I think because we haven't had an updated presentation on the housing needs assessment, it doesn't seem like a great time to, I'd rather us have an opportunity to hear a little bit more about it first before we bring it to a joint meeting, particularly in the context of trying to whittle this down, because that just wouldn't be, I didn't feel like the information that we've received so far would be particularly relevant to the rest of the conversation. But
I know that we did get a presentation on that, but the question, but you're right about that it's more specific. Maybe that becomes the last item, and if we don't get to it, because sometimes if there's a robust conversation about the other two, that may be a final item to kind of fill it in. Unless there's another item that's more important.
Just for an update on that item, we have requested and we do expect to see by Friday of this week the final draft version of that document with some improvements to it. And as soon as we have it, we've verified that those final metrics that we wanted to see in that document are in there, we will pass that along to council. It's my hope that perhaps we could send it along this weekend or Monday at the latest, so that council would have it pretty early. But absolutely, putting it on later in the agenda is fine with staff. If it's not something council wants to discuss, I think that's okay too. We could make it very brief if you did wish to.
One of the advantages of presenting the housing assessment at the joint meeting is that, to me, one of the major recommendations from that study is that the city invest in pilot projects and a fund to rehab houses that are potentially going to be condemned after the current resident usually dies. And other things that really require us to develop projects that cost money. And in the long run, they save money, but in the short run, they cost money. And that's important for the commissioners to see, that for us to solve the housing availability and housing affordability issues, which lead to helping to solve homelessness issues, we need to be able to fund some of these projects. I think that will then lead into this payment in lieu of taxes conversation, maybe the Department of Natural Resources performance conversation that the county wants to have. So I'd kind of like to see us start with some presentations, maybe intentionally keeping them really short. I mean, maybe presenting the housing assessment in just 10 minutes. Presentation by Mary Hogan on the homelessness task force, I think that's really important, but maybe we could keep that to 15 minutes. Reviewing the funding for 2060 and 2163, maybe keep that really short as well, just so that all this informs then a very robust and data-driven conversation about what we need to do in proposed number 4 about improved regional coordination of housing and homelessness issues. So I realize I'm not narrowing down the list, and I'm saying let's do it all, but let's be really strategic in our timing so that we have all the information on the table and we're not just speculating and pointing fingers about where the problems lie.
That sounds like a good idea. I like that we're not talking about something where other people are going, wait, but over here we have an answer to that question you're all theorizing about, when we could have had the answer up front and then actually have that conversation with real information.
Is your intention to give the housing assessment to the county commissioners also? So they have the same piece to review?
So there are county representatives that have participated in the housing task force, and certainly they would receive a copy of it as part of being on that group. But we could certainly send it off to the entire, we're going to be posting on the city website. We can certainly provide a link to that document as well.
It's just, if we can forward that on to the 3 commissioners so that they have it specifically the same thing we're looking at.
That's easy to do.
I mean, in the interest of whittling it down, I would say that the presentation on the homelessness task force is the one that I would be fine with removing.
Is that presentation likely going to be about how the county spends the 2016-2163 funds?
I mean, potentially, but I don't know that that is going to do much to inform the later parts of that conversation.
So you're mainly thinking that if we stick to just housing, like maybe workforce housing, that homelessness, I mean, because it's true that the more workforce housing we have, that may alleviate some of the really lower income houses available for homelessness. So the more we increase that workforce housing number, but I don't know if that's, is that your intent with that?
So I guess I'm somewhat, I don't know, I'm somewhat pessimistic about how these meetings go. We often talk about very general, broad things, and we have these conversations that kind of float in the air and go nowhere. And so the faster we can get to the point where we talk about, here's the projects that we need to fund, here's our commitment to funding them, how can we work together to fund them, the better. So the fewer presentations we have that aren't directly getting to that, I think, the better.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about housing and not doing enough about housing.
Is the review of 2016 and 2163 a presentation, or would it just be like, here's a handout that articulates it and someone would review it
Is that something that we could just do ourselves?
and be prepared about it?
So I don't know that we have the specifics on that, but I do anticipate that more than likely the presentation that is referenced in item 2 is actually informing relative to what some of the county thoughts and task force thoughts are to those 2 funding sources. So I think that presentation was likely intended to be preliminary information regarding those 2 funding sources.
So it's kind of 2/3 is kind of one item.
Probably so, but again, assumptions, and my suggestion would be, what does council desire, and we'll make sure we communicate that to the county commissioners.
So I think we're hearing that all the beginning 1, 2, and 3 should, take half an hour. We can get 10 minutes for each of these. And then we can really spend the time on 4, which is the conversation about the improved regional coordination of housing and homelessness. I mean, that seems to be the bigger matter. So I think that we can communicate to them that we would like to spend the most time on that and really get some action items done.
Is the DNR/payment in lieu of taxes, the state and federal funding streams also relevant in that? So I'd rather spend, we can always meet again, and again, I agree with Lindsay, we keep talking about things and not doing things, but if we have a limited amount of time, it seems like it would be nice for all of us in the same room to get all the background information, even if we don't get to, again, we don't want to put the cart before the horse, so let's get all the information, figure out what we have to work with, so if we end up not having time to really dig into how we could, what regional coordination could look like, that could be the next meeting, because then we actually have all the background information. Instead of leaving one of the funding pieces out. Does that make sense?
It does, but this is why I'm pessimistic about these meetings.
Yeah.
Because then it's always the next meeting.
Yeah.
And, I'm also pessimistic because we're gonna get to the point where we say, hey, the solution to homelessness is to build housing. Here's how we should build housing. It should be in dense urban places. It should be multifamily. We should be building apartment buildings. The private sector is not interested in a lot of these projects. The public sector probably needs to step in and do it. And then we'll hit a political reality wall where someone says, how do we fund that? And no one really has a good answer, because the best answer is we probably should have a tax. And that's a word that we don't like to say. And so again, we can have whatever agenda we want, and I'm going to be pessimistic about the meeting. So I'm sorry to speak.
Well, let's capture that thesis statement right there, and that's the topic of conversation. Because that's really where the conversation goes, and then it stops.
So it looks like, again, if we can send the message to the county commissioner saying that we really are looking to have some action items, specifically that funding housing, and then the stuff will inform us, but it's true, we talk about it, we have a lot of information, keep the information, I think if they can give us a lot of that stuff for us to be reading, we can come prepared, and then we can start really seeing how we fund these projects to be built.
Council, that's a little bit helpful, but just to be clear, brief, on one hand, I was hearing very brief presentations, and then it was moving in the direction of no presentations. So would you still prefer to do a 5, 10-minute, and 10-minute presentation type situation on the first 3 items, hoping for a broader discussion, and trying to be optimistic that we'll actually be able to talk with some conclusive items moving forward?
That makes sense. And these discussions, if we enter them with a positive attitude, and hopefully we'll learn something, that's what it's all about. So I think a short presentation would be very helpful.
The other advantage, I think, of having the presentations as a part of the agenda is then the individuals who might be able to answer, like, we know our staff will be here and there may be other people. We can do the research, but if we come with questions, then the appropriate people are there to answer those questions. So I think building in the short presentations is a good idea. I probably will not be able to be there because I'm planning now to go to a conference. So if there's like PowerPoint presentations that could be sent to me that I can follow along with a little bling when it's time to turn the page, that would be helpful.
I'd also like to add that there's a lot of knowledge about these issues that aren't among the 7 of us in the city council and the 3 county commissioners. And so a format that is open to people and not just among those 10 and our administrators, I think would be helpful, so that we're making a conversation where we don't finish the conversation and somebody in the audience says, hey, I could have informed that an hour ago and we wouldn't have spent so much time spinning in circles.
So council, based on what I've heard, we're going to move forward with the agenda as presented to you this evening, but really push for brevity on items 1 through 3, modifying item 5 relative to the federal opportunities.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, so we are done. Okay, so we're moving to contracts and purchasing. Hosted voice service, contract service, order amendment.
Madam Mayor and Council, tonight we have with us IT Manager Weeks, who will provide this presentation on this item.
Thank you, Mr. West, who is my boss, by the way. My name is Todd Weeks. I am your Information Technology Manager, and I bring to you tonight a proposal for hosted voice services for the city of Port Angeles. Now, I went down this road and a little bit surprised, again, to Nathan, that I've upgraded the network last year. We just upgraded our email system, as you well know. And how, really? You're thinking about replacing the voice systems, too. Very ambitious. No, what it is I'm looking at these from a total cost of ownership perspective. So we're looking at services and systems and costs over time. When I started down this road, we started looking at the budgets that were available, the system that was there on hand. We do have an ailing system that requires a lot of maintenance, a lot of time of staff time to just keep going. It is about a 12-year-old system that is both analog and digital, but mostly analog. So in the age of digital, I had this opportunity, which I remind Nathan a lot that the word for, or the symbol for crisis and the symbol for opportunity in Chinese happens to be the same symbol. And so here we are at a crisis point where we have a system that's ailing, we need to replace it, and we have a lot to do. But what this is going to do is also going to free up some time, and it's also going to free up some money. So I'm not coming to you tonight to ask for additional money, I'm coming to you tonight to ask that we save a whole bunch of money. And we're going to do that too by moving into a service-based, we are in the service-based economy, right? And a lot of these things previously were on-site systems that we maintained. We became experts in these systems. And we're basically a little telephone company inside of Port Angeles. And Joe is the operator of that system. So again, my goal here is to look at the total cost of ownership, and that really tells me a lot when I do the cost analysis on these. So we looked at the current system and the costs, which were somewhat exorbitant. So we went out and we talked to 3 different vendors. We got some quotes, we got some ideas on another replacement on premise system. Maybe we do like a hybrid system, and then we also looked at Wave Broadband, who provides currently our transport services, our fiber services throughout the 11 people sites in the city of Port Angeles. And there's a unique service that they do provide, which is a direct connectivity from our offices via fiber to what's called Class 4 voice switches. Now, for all of you out there that may know what that means, great, but most of us don't. But what that means is that we are actually we will be, with the acceptance of this proposal, directly connected to class 4 switches in the city of Port Angeles. That is huge for connectivity. It's not a reliance on the internet, but it is a hybrid model. So some of our sites and some of our phones will be operated, potentially could be operated through the internet, which is called voice over IP. You're probably familiar with that term. We call it VoIP in our world of acronyms. IT is, of course, all acronyms. And so where we're going with this then is looking for a system that's not only resilient, but has the features and has the modern calling capabilities that we all desire. I know with our last event, we were kind of scrambling to get phones available to people so that we could take those calls from residents and answer requests. With this service, we get feature sets that are mobile phone applications. So you can send, receive calls, make calls from our city desk phones and our city numbers on our city-issued cell phones. But bigger than that is this concept that the system is in the cloud. So all the calling is through a CLEC. So things come in throughout the country, calls come in, and they are directly connected to class 4 switches, if you remember that term, which we would be directly connected to. But again, we also have this opportunity to plan for continuation of operations and to plan ahead and put in systems that are resilient to natural disasters or wind disasters, whatever they happen to be. And that is that internet-based calling. So anywhere in the world, we're going to be able to stand up a phone, put in an app, and make and receive voice calls. And then the third thing that I wanted to mention to you tonight, which is really, really important from my perspective as a modern IT manager, and that is to have stable costs over time. What we see in a lot of these IT budgets is that we plan every 4 to 5 years. This is about a 6-year lifespan system. And you see these budgets go from pretty stable to all of a sudden we ask for a bunch of money to replace it. And then 4 or 5 years later, we ask for a whole bunch of more money. And those costs are unknown. We're always looking for the best cost effectiveness. We're always looking for systems that are cost effective. But those unknowns over time are what I'm trying to avoid. And also trying to get that stability over time so we have a known cost per employee. And we know what it costs per phone to have a phone on the desk. But to get to the order that's in front of you, it is a request to have the city manager sign a contract with Wave Business Services for hosted voice services for the city of Port Angeles. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And thank you for your time.
You have me saving money.
Me too. An estimated 3-year savings of $150,000. That's just wonderful. Thank you so much. And it also says this funding request for 2020 and 2021 will be lowered to $72,000 per year. Hey, hooray! Thank you. I'm all for this.
Any questions or comments?
So just so I understand, we're kind of outsourcing this, that used to be kind of in-house.
We're taking a system that was managed in-house, run in-house, owned wholly by the city of Port Angeles, and we are going to service-based.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And in doing so, we get cost savings and we get significant seemingly technological upgrades.
Absolutely, yes. All the devices, all the phones, all the call trees, all the hump groups, again, these are terms that are only in telephony, but it's a white glove service, so it's the vendor doing all the work. In that sense, it's supported 24/7. We do have management consoles that we will be available, but it will delight some other members, union members as well, that I believe our core mission here is to make things better and to make things more efficient and more cost effective. And if we're doing our jobs as public servants, we get there. And I see a couple people in the audience that will benefit highly and have that more efficiency from a digital-based system, especially as calls come into the main number of Port Angeles. So we're going to be able to react quicker. We're also going to be it's that resiliency piece that we really can't underestimate. Thank you.
So actually, before you go, they do have one quick question. So this is going to be tied with Wave. And I know that we have a waiver contract that's coming up to 2023, something like that.
That's correct.
So-
2021, I believe, is the end of the current memorandum of understanding. And I negotiated with Wave that this agreement ends before that. So we do have a current contract with Wave for fiber connectivity, which is data transport or wide area network services. And again, this partnership, and I really do view it more as a partnership, has that unique capability that we have fiber connected to 11 sites in the city of Port Angeles, and each one of those sites will be connected directly to a Class 4 voice switch at the Wave central office.
Great, thank you. Anything else?
I move to approve and authorize the city manager to award and sign a service order for the hosted voice services with Wave Business Solutions Limited Liability Company for a maximum not to exceed amount of $72,000 per year for 3 years.
Second.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Council, is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, we are into the, so we are at council reports. Councilmember Kidd.
No report this evening.
All right. Councilmember Meredith.
All that, no report.
All right. Mayor Dexter.
My only report is that I may be missing the next meeting. I have a little bit more due diligence to do on the conference that I have registered for to make sure that it is, anyway, I need to do a little more work to make sure that it's a good fit. But theoretically, I'll be at the Mayor's Conference on Entrepreneurship in Kansas City during both these two meetings. But the evenings look pretty free, so I should be able to call into both the joint meeting and the council meeting that week.
Thank you. Councilmember Sherman Warren.
So I attended the entrance interview with the state auditors earlier today, which I found very informative. In particular, they actually read our council meeting minutes to figure out what issues to audit in the city. So I'm being very thoughtful about what I say. I know, yeah. But what I want to talk about more was I attended the first couple of hours of a program called Tall Cop Says Stop, which in and of itself isn't very informative. But what it is a presentation by former Boise police officers talking about current trends in drugs and drug use. And I wanted to go because I know drug use has been a big conversation in our community, often discussed in connection with homelessness, although I think it's really important that we understand that drug use and drug addiction and homelessness are separate issues that sometimes are co-occurring. So that was really informative in a lot of ways. There's also another conversation along similar lines coming up, and I asked that the flyer for it be included in our council packet. So it's on the 89th page, PDF page 89, or L13 of the council packet. And that's, again, by the Collin County Health and Human Services on the role of medication treatment and the impact of stigma in responding to the opioid epidemic. It's on Thursday the 30th from 10 to 12 in the basement of the Olympic Medical Center. And there's an RSVP requested. I think the point of all this is to say that a lot of people who are addicted to opioids and other drugs in our community were initially prescribed those drugs by doctors, or they're also treating mental health or trauma issues. So if we want to do something as a community about people on the street doing drugs, we should give those people a place to live. That's a theory called housing first. It's been tried and tested in a number of places, and it's not just a humanistic policy. It's not just, oh, let's help people because that's the right thing to do, although it is. It's also a smart policy if we care about saving taxpayer money. And that's because the most expensive place for people to sleep in a place like Port Angeles is the hospital and the jail. And for people who are on the street, they're dealing with medical issues that often they can't address at the right time, and they end up in the ER. Or they're more likely to end up in altercations, or they end up in jail. people doing drugs in public places, similar issues, and we all pay for that. So there have been multiple studies that have looked at the financial benefit of housing people who are chronically homeless. It's the smart fiscal policy, it saves money, it reduces negative impacts on our parks and other public places. So we need to move toward a system to get people off the street, and that means supportive permanent housing. If we think we can't pay for that, and I think this is where we get into this issue, we think, oh, well, how are we going to pay for that? Well, we're already paying far more by allowing chronic homelessness to continue in our community. And the only reason we don't see that we're paying that higher cost is because those costs are hidden in the costs for running the hospital, the costs for running the jail, costs borne by police department, by the fire department, by others. So we don't see those as the costs of chronic homelessness. But if we add it all up, we're paying far more now than we would be paying if we actually did something. Many cities have, a number of cities have gone to what they call functional zero homelessness, often first by targeting veteran homelessness and saying, we're going to make sure that no one who's a veteran is homeless on the streets of our community. And then some communities, at least 3 in the United States, have expanded that to zero functional homelessness for everybody in the community. So let's not, say we can't afford to do this. We're paying far more now, and the people of Port Angeles, the taxpayers of Port Angeles, are paying far more by us not addressing these issues. Thank you.
Thanks, that was a great update. And if anybody wants to read more about this, I mentioned a while back that I read the book Evicted by Matthew Desmond. It goes into a lot of those details and with stories and data. I attended the Port Angeles Regional Chamber of Commerce board meeting earlier, last month actually, and we also have great meetings, but the one thing I would ask people to, they're doing a business climate survey. It's open for a few more days, so if you know business owners, direct them to the Port Angeles Regional Chamber of Commerce business climate survey so they can fill it out so we can get some good data. It's open until May 10th. And other than that, I don't have more to report.
And this has been a really busy time because I ended up going to a couple of different things. So the biggest one was the Collin County Compassion Charter meeting that happened. And they had at least over 80 people attending. It was taped and videoed, and they have a Facebook page. And it was, the beginning, Mark Ozias does a really great job of opening it and realizing, hey, we're all in this together and we all work better together. So I would say that was absolutely the first 10 minutes of him speaking. And so we ended up reading the charter together. It turned out well. So we had over 41 speakers at that place. This woman named Marilyn Turwich, I forgot her name. Anyway, she did some powerful conversations about how one of them was 4 godmothers in Mexico got together. They didn't have a lot of money. All they wanted to do was help paint people's houses and say, we can begin here. They had 1,800 houses that needed painting. And by the end of the second year, they had 700 volunteers, and they only had 180 houses left to paint. This was just 4 godmothers who said, look, we really need to help people paint their houses. And they, it really helped everybody slowly care about each other and build community. So Okay, and the last thing I want to talk about that one was that one person can make a huge difference, and this was told with a story about the canoe journeys. 14-year-old kids said, hey, let's get back to our traditions, and then the paddle to Seattle was born. And so it just took one person, one kid, at that point he was 14 years old, who made a difference and made it happen. So I think we all have to realize how powerful we can be. It just takes one person with some dedication. Then the next thing I just wanted to mention is that we're going to have a lodging tax meeting next week. We'll be hopefully working on the master plan. We had a little broadband meeting. So we continued that. It's called the PA Pact, and looking at figuring out about bringing options of broadband here to Port Angeles. And the last thing I wanted to say is I will be at that pickleball thing on May 13th because I do play pickleball. I enjoy it, and they will be classes, so come join. It'll be fun. So with that, I will turn it over to Manager West.
Madam Mayor and Council, I do have a number of items for your information this evening. A couple of them have already been mentioned, including the Colum County Health and Human Services event that takes place on May 30th at the hospital. Additionally, the MRSC, Affordable Housing and Homelessness Part 1, which takes place May 22nd starting at 1 p.m. Additionally, I wanted to mention a few other items. At your last council meeting, there was a substantial discussion relative to our aerial photography. I do want you to know that staff did a great deal of work looking into those details. We did determine that Wright Brothers did not have the skill set that was necessary to undertake the work. In fact, the work was quite technical in nature. We did move forward with the originally intended contracting party. Additionally, I wanted to point out that on your dais you do have the 2019 meeting schedule for council, identifying a number of upcoming items. I want to highlight about 3 of those items for council's attention. One of them, as we've done with the cost of service assessment to date, we have tried to do that as a UAC meeting where full council attends so that we do not have to duplicate presentations moving forward. We did build in part of the May 14th meeting for a summary conversation for council to have with UAC on the 14th. But I do want to mention that we are trying to modify that meeting a bit to ensure that we keep intact the integrity of the UAC recommendation. And for that reason, my suggestion would be that council attend just the first hour of that meeting for a summary conversation on the COSA. Then following that, the UAC committee would have their consideration and recommendation on the capital facilities plan. Following that, the UAC would independently have their recommendation to council on the COSA itself. So hopefully that is helpful. That's staff's recommended plan for the May 14th meeting. Full council would attend from 3 to 4 approximately. Might be a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, not sure. And then UAC would continue for the remainder of that meeting. Additionally, I want to highlight on May 21st, we do have a 1-hour work session prior to the council meeting for the topic of public restrooms. And then again, I want to also highlight, because it came up earlier in this meeting, we have set aside another pre-council work session on June 18th to discuss council budget goals, so that we have those in advance of doing the 2020 budget. I'd be happy to answer any additional questions, and that's all I had.
Any questions? So,
Again, I'd like to thank staff for coming up with this list and giving us a heads up on what's coming up several months in advance. I think it's really helpful for us to know that an item's on the agenda and then we don't have to bring it up last minute or feel like it's getting neglected. So thank you again for that.
Thank you.
really appreciate that. And you brought up something instead of MRC. The MRC, the committee I serve on, is having the ORCA Forum on May 10th at the Heritage Center, 1 to 4. I forgot to mention that because we've been working on that. We'll have four speakers from the Governor's ORCA Task Force will be there. So it should be a good conversation. All right, so with that, we will open the second public comment period tonight. So if there's anybody in the audience who would like to stand up and speak to council on any item you would wish, please step forward, state your name and whether you live in the city. And we'd love to hear from you.
Hi, I'm Amy Miller. I live in the city. I just wanted to draw your attention to an article that came out in the PDM pretty recently. It's not going to be in our city, it's going to be in Sequim, but the Jamestown Squam tribe has bought some acreage and several healthcare facilities are getting together so that come 2021 we are going to have a really nice behavioral health facility in our area. And it's not going to solve all of our problems, but this is going to be a game changer for the folks that I work with out there in the world. And I think if there's any way that we are asked to put our support behind that, I'd like to encourage us to do that because this is going to be huge. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience who would like to address council at this time?
Hi, my name is David Reed. I live in Collin County. I do not live in Los Angeles. And maybe I can turn the shirt around backwards right now. I'm not speaking as a union member or a city employee. I just wanted to, there were two things that came up tonight that sparked ideas in me. And one is about the traffic camera idea. And maybe this is just a perspective for folks to consider that some of the more paranoid members of your electorate might say. So I sure hope that camera system is somehow proactively prevented from ever being used by Google's or anyone else's face recognition software. It sounds creepy, but I've read some articles about traffic cameras, I think it was in Florida, that, yeah, let's just start doing facial recognition. Whoa! So I just think that might be something to consider, some privacy concerns. And the other thing was, Lindsay, when you were talking about spending money to prevent homelessness and how it should be able to help us save invisible costs. I think I can see that too, and I think that's a strong argument. It might also help beef that argument up enough, or a little, if I don't know if there's any way to do this, but if you say, okay, social service agencies and hospital districts and mental health districts, we think that if we spend $1 million putting people into housing, getting them out of homelessness, you're going to save $333,000 each. You don't just get to say, oh, thank God, we finally made the budget. We can spend it on other things that we've been meaning to. The taxpayers won't see a change. Actually, they'll see you spent $1 million to end homelessness, and all these agencies got to breathe a little easier, but their budgets didn't go down. So it seems like as a taxpayer, you'd see, crap, one more expense, and maybe these other agencies are working more efficiently, but we still paid more. So maybe, I don't know if there's any way to say, if you guys see savings related to these these projects, you got to kick us some back. It's like, we'll front you the money by ending homelessness. You got to bring some of those savings back to the taxpayers. So just a way to make it very visible to everyone in here who's paying more taxes. Great, we got a rebate because we invested this year. 3 years later, we saved money. So that's just an idea. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else who would like to speak? Again, I want to thank you all for attending the City Council meeting. Really appreciate you guys coming here and being here to speak your mind. We welcome you back anytime, so please come back. And so with that, we are adjourned. Thank you. Good night.